It used to be so simple. You were a boy or you were a girl. But that was then.
It was early 2017. My wife and I were sitting on the couch in our living room watching the documentary Gender Revolution with Katie Couric.
And this,
The next battleground, transgender rights.
is now,
Born both a boy and a girl.
as we find ourselves in the midst of a gender revolution.
She's like, I'm not a boy. I'm a girl in my heart and my brain.
There are areas in the brain that correlate with gender identity.
When Ellie, who was then your son, said that, is that a little scary?
And then the doctor came over and said, well, sometimes babies are not quite a girl and not quite a boy. She would need surgery.
These are human rights violations on intersex kids' bodies.
There's evidence that seems to show trans brains are in fact different.
And I use he, him, his.
I use they, them, their. I am plural.
This is not just one individual, but a whole group of kids.
At times, do you feel like, whoa, 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 it's too fast, it's making me dizzy? What about your mom and dad? Do they call you Brian now?
They call me D.
Do you wish they'd call you Brian?
Yes.
But a lot of us don't even have the strength to report a crime.
Well, I want to empower other women like us.
Your case is going to be heard before the Supreme Court.
I'm looking for the same opportunities that my peers enjoy every single day, and that includes using the same restroom.
I said, goodbye, Bill, and she became Kate. If you love someone, you're willing to do what it takes.
There are people in these societies, they recognize more than two genders.
We're all a lot more complicated than we've assumed.
Partway through, my wife paused the show and turned to me and asked, "Is this what you want? To take female hormones and live as a woman?" My heart raced with excitement that after all these years of holding this secret deep inside, perhaps here was my opportunity to finally get to live authentically with who I was inside. Just 4 months earlier or so, she fulfilled her childhood aspirations of marrying the man of her dreams, me. Yet all along, I had held on to this relentless drive and sense that inside I was truly female, even though I had a male exterior. This was something that I felt ever since I was a young child, something that caused me deep distress. In that moment, I expressed to her that I did have a desire to live full-time as my authentic self, the me that was hiding inside this male outward appearance. As expected, this news absolutely rocked her precious little world and family. I would soon begin seeing a gender therapist who would write me the letter qualifying me to be prescribed female hormones. I began to paint my fingernails and dress a little more femme as I made the not-so-slow progression toward full female expression in public. By August or September of 2017, I was living in the world full-time in my female appearance. And for the first time in my life, I felt a sense of peace and belonging I had never felt before. I felt as though I was finally living in authenticity to who I really was inside. Finally able to openly and freely express this female side of myself that I had kept so deeply locked inside for so many years. It was an incredible feeling of freedom and joy, true authenticity. However, my body was still very clearly male. I still had my male anatomy to constantly remind me of the lie I was living. It became obvious in very short order that in order to actually feel authentic to myself, I was going to have gender reassignment surgery to make my body physically appear the way I felt inside. In 2019, after 2 years of consuming female hormones and living full-time in my female expression, I was scheduled for surgery. Surgery that would remove my penis and testicles and convert them to a vagina. This, I felt, was absolutely necessary to my well-being. I felt that unless I did this, I literally could not go on living this life anymore. The feeling of being trapped in one's own body is something I would never wish on my worst enemies. It is an absolutely horrific experience. It feels hopelessly devastating to feel as though you were truly meant to be female, yet here you are in a very clearly male body with male anatomy that you look down at with disgust and hatred because it represents something so far removed from what you truly feel yourself to be. July 9th, 2019, I woke up from surgery, and when I awoke, my biggest fear was that I might be told they ran into complications and had to abort the surgery. I was not afraid of dying on the operating table, nor was I overly concerned about what I was irrevocably taking from my wife. I was afraid of waking up with a penis, like I had already done for 14,114 mornings of my 38 years of life at this point. I knew I could not emotionally handle such devastating news. However, to my wondrous relief and joy at the time, I woke up to the news that all had gone well, and that I now had the female parts that I had desired. That I now could live happy and free, knowing that my physical body now finally represented the feelings I had inside. For 6 years I lived happy with this decision, happily living as a woman, even though that's impossible. Traveling all over the country and to Mexico with my wife and stepdaughter, feeling the extreme joy that comes from feeling so comfortable in my own body, as I was so happy. Or was I? After all, I was finally living as my true, authentic self, right? I had done as the therapists and transgender community had suggested I do. I took the female hormones, had the surgery, used women's spaces and women's restrooms regularly as I felt I was meant to, the places I felt I belonged because I too was a woman, just the same as the women who were born in female bodies. But something was missing. Something was off. Something didn't quite feel right. And my marriage was suffering. My family was suffering. My parents were suffering. My sibling was suffering. Everyone who ever knew me was suffering. I, in fact, was suffering. I had completely rejected the existence of God and Jesus in my life just a short time prior to allowing this desire to be a female to take over me. I had always had this feeling that I was born in the wrong body and that I was meant to be female, but I also had a belief in God and Jesus growing up, which kept me grounded in a way. It kept me from allowing this feeling to become a full-on identity. When I lost my belief in God and became an atheist, I suddenly felt as though I was in a barren desert wasteland with no food or water or comfort, just completely lost to wander on my own with no direction. Yet my ego convincing me that I had finally found myself. I was under a delusion that what I was experiencing was a sense of freedom, when in actuality, what I was experiencing was the feeling of being untethered, subject to the slightest breeze that could carry me away into my own mind and thoughts. I, like much of the world, had fallen into the belief that it was possible to be born into the wrong body. I genuinely thought it was possible to be born with a male body but a female mind and soul. I thought this is what happened to me. That if there was a God, that he somehow made a mistake and put the soul of a female into a male body. This is what most so-called mental health professionals profess to be the reality as well. And in doing so, they justify the actions of prescribing someone born male with female hormones and surgeries to correct the mistake that God made. The mental health system's exact purpose is to help us to see our delusions, to help bring us back to a sense of reality, to make us aware that what we are feeling or believing is based on false ideas and perhaps childhood traumas and developed perspectives. But when the mental health system affirms a person's delusion or confusion about one's own identity and gender, we lose all structure. We arrive at a place where not only have we lost our hold on reality, but the therapists are right there with us just as untethered as we are. My gender therapist was a woman herself who lived with confusion about her gender. She lived as non-binary, choosing to neither identify as the woman she was born to be, nor as a man. This was a woman who put herself out there as a therapist to help individuals with their gender identity, yet clearly struggling to find peace in her own body, and unable to accept the reality of the body she was born into. Someone in this position is going to only affirm my own gender delusions, because if she did not, she would be self-invalidating. Sadly, all too often this is the case, where gender-confused individuals become therapists in the mental health realm who have no interest whatsoever in helping a person to come out of the delusion, but rather by affirming countless gender-confused individuals like myself, they make themselves feel better and valid. I drug my poor wife and stepdaughter into this craziness of allowing my own childhood traumas and developed perspectives and therefore formulated beliefs about myself to cause me to think it was appropriate and in my best interest to mutilate my body in the ways I did. And far too many therapists exist in the world who will affirm such ludicrous behavior as if it is simply being authentic. These therapists sit there all day long telling countless young people that it is in their best interest and will result in a better life to take cross-sex hormones and to eventually have permanent surgeries that will make them happier, and that this is living in true authenticity. But here's a different perspective from someone who has gone down that path, visited with the affirming therapists, taken the cross-sex hormones, had the surgery, devastated my wife and family, and has now come out on the other side with a profoundly intricate understanding of what causes a person to do such a thing. We are all perfectly made, born into exactly the right body. It is only a sequence of early childhood experiences that expose us to various stimuli in such a way that causes us to develop certain perspectives. As we go through our life, we continue to view everything through the lenses of these early developed perspectives. My early childhood perspectives, like many, caused me to see being male as unacceptable and being female to be superior. Because this perspective was with me from such a young age, every experience I had throughout my life confirmed to me this concept that surely I must have been born in the wrong body, despite the ludicrous nature of such an absurd thought. I arrived in the year 2017, where much of the mental health system had somehow taken hold of this nonsensical hogwash, and where many of the therapists are prohibited from doing anything but affirming their clients' gender delusions, and you have a recipe for utter disaster. I was a wildly confused adult who needed desperately for someone to help me see through my confusion, not someone who was going to tell me that my confusions were accurate. And now, to my horror, I see countless parents post online about their young daughters and sons who struggle with their own sense of self and gender identity, and too often I see these parents out of desperation taking their kids to gender therapists in the hopes that the therapist will help their children to resolve this gender confusion. But instead, the therapists almost invariably will affirm the child's delusion, and the next thing you know, these young girls are going on testosterone, which has drastically destructive effects to the female body. Far, far worse than the damage caused by a male taking estrogen. Young girls are innately prone to societal influence, and we live in a world that can be very difficult to feel safe in as a young woman. I wouldn't know because I've never been one, but it is just factual reality. My personal world felt very unsafe to live in as a man, but that was not because I was not supposed to be a man. That was because my early childhood experiences gave me that perspective, a perspective that was affirmed and enlarged by someone in the mental health system who should have helped me to realize this was not the actual reality. It pains me greatly to see so many hundreds of young humans being lied to, being told that this is the answer to their happiness, and that this is necessary for living authentic to who they really are. This is not who they really are. They were created as a beautiful, worthy, lovable male or female just the way God designed them to be. Regardless of what your personal God may look like, the reality is that we all, as human beings, are born into bodies that are the result of an energetic pattern that extends far beyond this earth, a pattern established by God. It is when we stray away from this belief and knowing that our minds begin to lead us astray. Our minds begin to tell us that it is possible to be born in the wrong body. The more we entertain this thought, the more it grows within us until it becomes our literal identity. When we allow something to become our identity, we allow our choices in life to reflect this sense of self. If living authentically means to affirm a belief that was formulated over the course of your life, does that mean that a baby is born inauthentic? I would say true authenticity is who you were born as, prior to all of the life experiences that caused you to develop such altered perspectives of self. Living in true authenticity means living in alignment with exactly who God made you to be, not who your life experiences, traumas, various stimuli, and developed perspectives caused you to believe yourself to be. If you are watching this and you have a child who is struggling with gender identity issues, please do not ever take them to a gender therapist. Gender therapists will only affirm. Take them to God. Take them to Jesus. Remind them that despite what beliefs their childhood experiences, friends, the internet, social media has caused them to develop about themselves, that their actual authentic self is exactly who they were born as, and that they were born perfect in the eyes of the Lord, and perfect in your eyes.